Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte. We are here live at the Build Studio in New York City. Our next guest is an actor, musician, photographer, and best-selling author. He released his first single, Million Miles Apart, in 2017, starred for 7 years on a little show called Pretty Little Liars, and his last book, Life, Love, Beauty, was a national bestseller. His latest release, Hollywood, captures the beauty and glamour of famous landmarks and vistas right alongside the darker side of dreams unrealized and the faces, hands, eyes, and footsteps of those who live on the fringe of celebrity. It's a stunning and honest look at a place millions visit and many more imagine. Here to tell us all about this fantastic book, ladies and gentlemen, please make a ridiculous amount of noise and welcome the great Keegan Allen.
Thank you so much.
Oh, man. Keegan, I'm so excited you're here, dude. I really dug this book, and it's a beautiful thing. So congratulations on this, first of all. And I'm really excited to talk about the process behind it and how you put it all together. The beauty of Build is we got a couple of minutes to get into things, so I always love starting with just very simply, how are you, man? How's Keegan doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I'm doing really well. I love being in the city. It's so inspiring to walk around the streets here and be here, and this is such a cool, man, what a cool space. Yeah, I love it. And this feels great to see this big blown up on the side here. It's really cool, yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, that's awesome. I'm happy to hear that New York's treating you well. You like coming to the East Coast once in a while, man.
Love it, yeah.
It's
a home away from home almost,
yeah. Home, yeah, for sure. All right, man. Well, I'm happy to hear that, and again, very excited you're here. Let's do it. Let's talk about this a little bit. You know, 2015 rolls around. Life, Love, Beauty comes out, national bestseller. You're still working on the show and whatnot. How far after that book comes out and does its thing, do you start to conceptualize Hollywood? How far into that process do you go, I'm going to do another one?
Yeah, it took about 5 years from start to finish with this, but it was a project that I've always really wanted to do. Yeah, I grew up in Hollywood. I was born and raised there right off the Sunset Strip. And some people that have never been to Hollywood imagine it as this place with the dream, the chase, with the fringe of celebrity, all about that, and the C and B scene. And so I wanted to do a photo essay of the people, places, and atmospheres within that space, because it is something that really does. I mean, I learned how to feel from the movies. I learned how to feel from books that I've read. And Hollywood was very instrumental in sometimes bringing my favorite things to life and showing me what's cool and showing me how to, you know, what love was or what it wasn't. And it was always this grandiose place. But when you live there, when you see it every single day, it's so much more than that. And it gave me an opportunity as a human being to really step outside of myself in this like liminal space between being an actor, photographer, and growing up in that space, to be able to make eye contact with these street performers, with these people that are there every day, grinding, chasing, hustling, and just trying to live their best life.
Yeah, there's a whole section. There's a great piece about midway through where it is just a succession of all these different street performers, and then occasionally kind of juxtaposed with wax figures of these like famous, legendary Hollywood starlets and stars. And it was just really fascinating to kind of look into their eyes and see all these different people. And it got me thinking about, man, too, to see Hollywood through your lens. It's very similar to, as like a New Yorker or someone who grew up in New York, like that view of like Times Square, where it's like everybody sees it as this big magical place, but as a New Yorker, it's kind of the last place you end up.
You try and stay away from it.
Away from it at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just really cool to sort of, through photos, get a similar perspective of like someone who's grown up in this world and sees it a certain way. I'm curious about with 250 some odd images, the written asides, the poetry, the music. Where do you start a project this vast with such grand vision? Where do you begin, and how far into it does it start to resemble that vision you have?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, no, it was quite an undertaking. I remember when I thought of tackling this subject with a photo essay, at first I brought myself to the conclusion that I would never really fully complete it. It was something that would just live for a small amount of time, but it would be very important. And when we look back on photography as it started, you know, Joseph Nassé-Fournier takes this amazing photo out his window. He took a piece of pewter and he painted chemicals on it, and he takes this photo back in the 1800s that was known as like the first photo ever. And it's just this, you know, very bland, vague photo out a window, but it means so much more to him, and it means so much more to anybody who views it. If you go into the museums and you see these photos from the 1800s, and to me, I wanted to take a moment in time that Hollywood was the way that it was, and just show it for the beauty that it is, the dangerous side that it is, and what draws me to it may not draw anybody else to it, or what draws someone else to it may not draw me to it. Just like you were saying with Times Square, I would never be caught dead in a million years on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But I went there and I did it because it was something that it frightened me. But it was so. There is a very beatific moment in which you can see the people, the places, and things merging with each other in a beautiful way. And it's a city that thrives on seeing people and being seen. It thrives off its vanity. So I wanted to kind of paint that beautiful kind of picture of that as well, because it needs to see itself at its best and at its worst, and that's what makes it so special.
The Hollywood Walk of Fame, there's one of the parts that stick out in my head is where you have the walk, and then next to it you kind of have the keychains of like this of this thing that people aspire to and work their entire careers for, and here's a rack of them for $1.50 a piece that you can buy and take home. And there's a couple of different moments like that where you do these fun for lack of a better word, juxtapositions of different things that really elevate the individual photos. When you're doing the layout, do you find a lot of that in that process where you lay everything out, or how much of that are you finding while you're shooting, where you're like, you have this other picture, and like, oh, this is a perfect moment that pairs with that? You know, how does that all come together?
Yeah, I would a good question as well. I would get home after shooting, and I would immediately either take my contact sheets that I would have developed previously, because I would never shoot too much. That's the other thing. I'd shoot like maybe 30 images, and then I'd whether it was digital or film. And I switched between digital and film throughout shooting this. But I would print it out 8x10 style, the entire book. And I'd move all my furniture out of my living room to the sides, and I'd lay everything out. And I would see how each exact image worked with each exact image, and certain marriages between images formed where I couldn't unsee them with each other. There was pairings that just worked, and it tells a story. It tells a story. Sometimes I don't need to say anything. Sometimes it's just there, right? And that was the other part of Hollywood that I was it was very important to me to tell the story without telling the story, without dictating to people how to feel. It was that the reader could come away with any experience that they wanted from it, having never been to Hollywood, having been to Hollywood as a tourist, or living there as a native for their whole life.
Without getting too in the weeds, talk about that limiting yourself while you're out there shooting, and why that is, and were you just especially digitally, were you exercising like self-control, or would you have to like literally put a small SD card or something in your machine?
No, it was
like how did you do it? You self-control. You just have to. That's it. I hit my 30. I'm done.
Yeah, anybody who shoots film out there knows what I'm talking about. It's you have a roll of film, and every shot that you take, it's like there's a little bit of it's expensive. You got to really be aware of what you're shooting and why you're shooting it and what it means to you. And every time, even if I click the shutter and I have a digital camera, it still becomes cluttered if I take too much time. So when I would take photos of people, I would take 2 different shots of them sometimes, or I would pretend to take the first shot, because when you take a photo of people on the street that are very aware of themselves, I mean, more hyper-aware than I feel like the highest celebrity in the world would notice if someone's trying to take a photo of them from across a restaurant. These people in Hollywood, they know when people are looking at them because they're dressed up as characters and such. So I would go up and I would talk to people, and the process was very, very intimate, and I wanted to have that experience of saying, look, I really want to take your photo for fine art purposes, and I'm doing a photo essay. And then they would give me this pose, and then the moment that they thought it was done, that's when I would take the picture. And so I didn't want to waste too much film or too much space, so that when I got home, I'm like, okay, these are the photos. I'd narrow it down. And shooting film is very different than shooting digital. There's a romance to the emulsification of film and chemical processing that is just really, really special. And then I ended up shooting a lot more on the M9 because of that CCD sensor. Yeah.
Well, so that kind of answers another question I had for you, kind of between digital versus film. It's still an aesthetic choice. It's not a matter of convenience or anything of that nature. There's still a specific type of look that you're getting from this sensor, much in the same way there's a specific type of color that you get from a certain film stock or thing like that. It's all an aesthetic decision. It's all an artistic decision.
Yeah, I made that a very specific decision to shoot on this with the pairing of an apochromatic lens, a 50 millimeter apo, which was specifically designed with this CCD sensor in mind, actually with the monochrome sensor. But here's the funny thing, like, I'm not affiliated with Leica, and everybody always thinks I'm trying to push Leica products.
Yeah.
It really is not. I bought all my own cameras. They're wonderful. They're a wonderful company. They don't give me any, like, I'm actually, like, if you're listening to me, I have one of my cameras in service that you still have for 6 months, and I would like it back. But they are they're a wonderful company, and they're very precise. The precision instrument, the German efficiency of their camera equipment. But they made a sensor back in 2009 for the M9 that was a CCD sensor, and there's no cameras today that are made with CCD sensors. Everything's CMOS. Everything, even in your phones right now, are CMOS sensors, and that's great. And they can take heavy amounts of load. The pixels are amazing, but CCD sensors have something very, very different, and they render an image almost like as if the bridge between digital and film. And Kodak did a collaboration with Leica back in 2009 that they brought the Kodachrome sensor. So Kodachrome was dying in 2010, and Steve McCurry shot the last roll, famously. And so now the only way to really get that little, even close, is to shoot on a CCD M9, and that paired with this lens and the very specific lighting choices that I would make, rendered images that I would never be able to replicate with any other camera or Photoshop or anything. It just is it's a very specific thing, and I wanted to stay out of Photoshop and retouching and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you're right. In doing the research, you go around the internet, and there are people that are insistent that you are like, he's working for Leica and all this. It's like, nah, dude, Leica has a reputation for a reason.
No,
man.
they do not work with anybody.
Exactly.
Even the people that they put in their promos, the people are like, so can I get a camera? And they're like, yeah, you have to buy it.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait, what?
They don't need to work with anybody, man.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that they have the best stuff. And also, too, you can't help it. Your first camera, as I read somewhere in correct me if I'm wrong, was Leica, was an M6,
M6,
right?
yeah.
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 First of all, it's a heck of a first camera.
I know. Well, it was technically, my dad let me borrow it.
He let you borrow it.
Yeah, and then I never
But
gave
there
it back.
is something I remember as a kid. There was always something special that I can sort of still remember of, like when your father or your mother or whatever would hand you the video camera or hand you the snapshot camera and say, okay, you go around and do something with this for a little bit. There's like a freedom and like a different way of seeing everything, and like you were in control. Do you remember that moment when you were handed that camera and like this was yours to use for the first time? Like,
yeah. In fact, you have my book Life, Love, Beauty, the first one in the audience right there. When the first photo after the LA riots photo, actually, if you open it up, you can see the first photo I ever took was of a man training his pigeons, and I remember that moment. It was a heat wave in Pittsburgh right there. It was a heat wave in Pittsburgh. I would go, this is back before cell phones, so I could go in the shower as a 9-year-old and get drenched wet, like cold shower, and then go back outside, and I put the camera on, and I wiped the lens, and there's fireflies everywhere and everything. It was really a beautiful moment for me because I remember setting it and seeing the arrows go together on the light meter and being like, okay. And I did it. I took that photo, and I was like, that's it. I'm stuck for life with this. I'm never gonna stop the obsession. So yeah, it was really beautiful. You always, it's funny. Is I was talking to someone about this the other day. It's like they're like, you romanticize everything. Like if I have ice cream, I'm like, this ice cream is so opulent and amazing and incredible. They're like, but I do, because I find that the things that make me feel the best in life, it's because I feel good while I'm doing them. And that was one of those moments, probably the first moment in my entire life where I felt good doing something that.
What a joyous problem to have, that you romanticize everything, that you just enjoy everything that fully and you can articulate it that way. To that end, talking about how the way things make you feel and talking about that particular moment in time, we have a couple of the photos from the book, I think, that we're going to show up here in a second. And I was wondering, this one's amazing. If you could just Tell us a little bit about the photo, or what you remember from that moment, why this stopped you in your tracks, why you captured it. And we'll begin with this beautiful one right here.
I remember, so in Hollywood, obviously we all know that there's the glitz and glamour, but there's like a darker side of Hollywood as well. And it deals with, I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio talked famously about how he grew up in Hollywood, and they were in Hollywood, and they thought, oh, we're in the best part, and then they walk outside of Western, and they're on Western Avenue, they're just like, where are we? There's like so many dark elements and entities around you. But because of that yin and yang, I would take night walks through Hollywood, and it's dangerous, but I kind of love that side of the gritty side. And these souls were just underneath. Like, this person was doing something underneath, and doing whatever, and he was lighting a cigarette or whatever they were doing. And I just thought it was so interesting how they were pretty much doing the same thing, but they were ignoring each other, and they were in such a close space, right out in the open. And as much as you try and connect with others, like, they're just, it was just an interesting moment. It says so much, It made me feel so connected, because there I was, like, voyeuristically watching this happen, and I was just like, took the photo and I just watched, and yeah.
Well, it is interesting, like, to have, like you said, they're in such close proximity, virtually engaging in a very similar activity, but they're completely independent of one another. They're completely isolated from one another, and they both probably feel very alone in this moment.
Exactly.
Like, but
yeah,
you're right there.
There is that, and yeah.
Very beautiful. We have a couple more. Let's take a look at another one here.
Oh, this is one of my favorite photos. I have it on the back of the book of Hollywood. It's my favorite photo. I think I've taken in the book, even though people have asked me, what's my favorite photo in the book? This is actually my favorite photo I've probably taken of Hollywood of all time, because it's on film. You could see the bus stop, Hollywood and Vine Station, and I was walking across the street, and everyone's walking around, the hustle and bustle. No one has noticed that the sky is so stunning, and like this sherbet, like beautiful, like oranges, and everything was just incredible. And we get this like clear look down the Hollywood Walk of Fame in the distance, and the light coming from the like little bodega style vendor. It was just incredible. It was so special, and headlights, everything about it made me feel like it was a plein air almost painting rendition of a perfect moment. Yeah, I really love it.
It really is. It is a gorgeous photo, and there is something about just this, objective beauty above, and everyone just operating with complete indifference below, like just moving on, carrying about their day, their evening.
Yeah, it's cool to see it in that big of a. Yeah. It's cool to see these blown up.
Awesome, man. All right, we got another great one here.
The famous Hollywood and Highland. Just walk. There's like a big crosswalk now, and it almost feels like a miniature Shibuya Square. But people just, people will line up on the outsides to cross, and there's always so many interesting people. People watching there is second to none in the world, because it's just every walk of life: tourists, natives, celebrities, everybody you could think of is there at any time, crossing that crosswalk. And I loved it too, because I shot it on an old 1964 lens, and I got that interesting rainbow lens flare on it. And I thought that the film had been expired, and it was not good. And then the moment I saw it, I was like, oh, that really ties in my Fibonacci scale of like compositional the composition just like pulls your eye around so well.
Was that an intentional lens flare, or was that something that serendipitously occurred? Like,
so it was like pseudo-intentional, because I knew that lens has a very it has like a faded quality about it, but I didn't know that it would be that pronounced. But I'm happy that it is now, because you can really see the gamut of color.
So beautiful. All right, we've got one more, I think, and then we'll turn it over to the audience.
Oh, this is a big. It's a bigger photo when you see it full. There's like a but. This is great. I really love this, because there's like it's a shadow of a person walking, but it's the Hollywood stars, but you can see that they're like kind of dirty a little bit. And there was a guy for years that would come and clean them and polish them and make them look almost brand new every day. And he was an amputee, and he didn't have I don't believe he had his leg, and he would just crawl from star to star. And it's amazing to think that there's like a maintenance that goes on for Hollywood to hold this thin veneer of glamour up. But the light always attracts me to photos. And I remember this photo very specifically. The light was just golden and beautiful, and
The
It
light's golden,
illuminated
and
it.
there's so many fun things happening with shadows.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you've got
Patterns, shadows,
the patterns.
conflicting
It's got it all, man.
patterns,
It's
yeah.
beautiful.
That's the other thing. The facades of these buildings are interesting as well. You know.
How well, first of all, thank you for diving into those. We just had those,
Yeah,
those
of
4
course.
blown up for us to take a look at.
The other thing too, we're gonna
Yeah.
make really clear, I love about the book is that even though I told anybody about these images, you can draw your own conclusions, you can find your own things. You might see that first image of those two people and just totally think a completely different thought. And that's what I really, really was interested in when I did my first book, Life, Love, Beauty, and now with my second book, is that it really doesn't, it inspires me to hear what others think of my work. Because photography is the most influential, and it impacts people so much through communication.
Well, you even with the written pieces that you put in there, these sort of non sequiturs. There's a disclaimer in the beginning that those are their own individual pieces meant to be anonymous. They are not in any way necessarily associated with the photos preceding it or what have you. And I was very curious about those pieces because obviously you're inspired by this experience, by these shoots. And I'm wondering how much of those pieces for you were you inspired after you had taken the photo, or were you inspired in the moment when you were out there on the walk and you were like, this is a great thing, I'm going to write about this?
Yeah, it was, you know, as I said, I had a lot of upfront and close personal interactions with people. It was more so than I'd ever been used to. I mean, constantly being in the public eye and like doing a television show where, you know, you walk in anywhere and people like are like, I know you from somewhere, is an interesting, it's an anomaly, I guess, for anybody to feel. But when the camera's turned on to others and all of a sudden I'm the one that's like, okay, I need the photo of this person. It was an interesting process of kind of trying to understand how to do that, you know, and be respectful and be present. So yeah, I mean, not to go off of that other question, but it forced me to make eye contact with people, and while they were talking to me about their stories, it really deeply affected me, and I would pull from different stories or different events that had happened in my life. And while I was talking to someone, I'd be like, okay, I need to put this in there somewhere, but it can't be near them. It can't be near their stuff. I got to make it anonymous. And I remember one street performer, in the book, there's one story that I'll share with you. There's this Foreverland I talk about, and it's also my Instagram handle on my other page, is about the idea of a perfect moment that you can find at any time, and that the idea is that when we look at reflections of ourselves, we sometimes try and see ourselves as the perfect version of ourselves, living in the perfect world that we would imagine for ourselves. And we could switch places at any time. And the person that I had originally thought this up with or had talked to me about it had passed away. And so I always try to make that story something that was very, very visceral and relatable. And through telling and sharing that story with others, they then shared their beautiful Foreverlands with me, their perfect moments, their perfect selves. And one of the stories that's in the book, this guy was telling me about how he was a street performer, and he was like very proud of himself and all this stuff. And he fell on hard times, and he became a person on the street that would do photos for tips. And we became very close. We talk every day. And he shared with me that he was scared of ever seeing his father because he didn't want to appear to be a failure, because to lose in America was terrible. And one day he saw his father walking down trying to find him because apparently, I don't know, his mother had passed away. And he went up to him in costume and was like, hey, welcome to Hollywood. How you doing? And the dad was like, I'm trying to find my son. And he was just like, oh, you know, well, how about we take a photo or something? He's like, no, I'm okay. And he had his arm around him, but he couldn't bring himself to say, I'm behind this mask. I'm your son. I'm here. And I didn't make it. And I'm sorry, Dad. And he like ran off and cried. Yeah, and you hear stories like that. You experience things like that. And for me, as a young actor, as an artist, I felt so conflicted, because it's like I didn't want to out the person, but I had to bring some of these stories to the surface, because the people really, without the people, the place is just a place, you know.
Just a sign on a hill.
Exactly. Oh, I like that. Oh, I should have. Oh, where were you 5 years ago?
It's yours, man. You can take it.
Oh, man.
I got to turn it over to audience Q&A because we're running out of time here, but I can't say it enough, man. Congrats on this thing. It's beautiful, dude. You really did a hell of a job.
Thank you so
and the photos are gorgeous. The written pieces are amazing. And it's a great piece, man. It really is. So you should be very proud. Thank you for being here. Let's go ahead. We got microphones in the room. We're going to take a couple of questions. I think our first one's right here.
Hi, Keegan.
Hi.
What is the secret behind this photo?
Oh, that's a good one. So there's if you guys look, there's a palm trees. I don't know if you guys can be able to see that. There's palm trees and there's sparkly light behind it. I know, I love how are you able to see it? Okay. So I put in, this is my first book, Life, Love, Beauty. There's a secret behind it. There it is, there we go. Available at www.keeganallenbook.com.
MVP in the audience
I know.
now.
Hey, there it is. The secret was my mom was getting chemotherapy and radiation about 6 years ago. Not to bring down the whole room, but she's in remission now. But when she was there, I would go with her through the chemo and radiation therapy sessions, and I would wait, and there was a fountain outside, and people would be there. There would be kids there. There would be parents there, and they would have very heavy wishes. They would go there with their pennies and nickels and dimes and throw it in, and you could tell that there was a lot at this. This was a wishing well. This was a place of deep desire to have the wishes come true, and there was a kid that would go there, and I would see him because his mom was there too, and we would sit and talk. And he's like, "Well, this is a place where you wish on the stars." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's really beautiful, but I don't. Oh, okay, it's a fountain." And I would look inside and be like, "Are there stars in here, somewhere?" But I never understood it until one day the light reflected on the back of the building. It was like a metal facade on the building, and it reflected into the fountain at twilight. And it illuminated all the pennies and all of the nickels and the dimes to look like stars. When you would look into the fountain and look up, the palm trees would be there, and you could see into the stars. And it was almost as if these wishes were transported into the fountain, into the sky behind you, and you could see your wish kind of coming true or fading or whatever it was. But yeah, that was a secret. It was really special, and it was a moment of deeper introspection. After I had done that, I was like, I need to look at the world a little more intensely. I can't just breeze by things, because had I not taken the time to examine what he was talking about, I would have never known that there was a whole Tumblr page right in that fountain of information and feelings. Yeah.
It's an interesting unit of measurement. There was a whole Tumblr page.
Yeah, that's how I usually monitor my feelings and angst. Is I'm like, here 100 miles and then a Tumblr page.
And then a Tumblr page. We've got time for two more. It looks like next one's going to come from right over here.
Hi.
Hi. Hey.
Hi. All right. So I just wanted to say, big fan. And I was just asking, since you've written you've written 2 books now. Yeah. Do you have a third one on the way? And what would your inspiration for the third one be, if you don't already have it?
Oh yeah, no, I am working on a third book right now. It's the inspiration came from from Hollywood, from shooting Hollywood and recognizing a very specific photo style, and falling in love with people. I can't really talk about too much of what it is, but I promise you, if you enjoy Hollywood, you'll really love the third book. It's a huge undertaking, but I'm pretty confident that it'll be an amazing experience.
I came from Toronto to see, so she's just wondering if you're actually going there at one point in time.
Where is it?
To Canada.
Toronto. Oh yeah, I eventually will go to Canada.
Okay. Thank you.
I love Canada. Hey.
Thank you.
We've got time. Thank you so much for that. We've got time for one more question. Yeah, okay, so we'll do one more right here.
Hi, this is an online question.
Okay.
Honor Waterfield would like to know, what is the photographer or style of photography that inspired you the most?
So a lot of photography inspiration comes from different things. Like, it was funny, I'm not going to say Tumblr first, but Tumblr was a huge thing for me because, obviously I went to art school and I studied really, really great photographers, and I love very pop culture-y kind of photographers, and I also love classic photography. And Alex Webb was a huge inspiration to me. Larry Sultan, a huge inspiration. Larry Sultan was a huge inspiration to me. And then I would always hang around photographers, and I started to recognize that certain photographic styles really stitched to me better than others. Like Annie Leibovitz is incredible, but to me, it's so unattainable because I would need a crew of 16 people and like all these lights and all this stuff to get what she does, and her eye and her vision and all that. So I became more obsessed with snapshot photography, and that was inspiring to me, of taking something that would normally just be a snapshot, but making it a bit more special. And relatable. I think relatable photography to me has always been important. So yeah, I sometimes will peruse through Tumblr, and I find so much inspiration through the angst. It's the human angst that we all have, this like cosmic angst of like, okay, get a good job. Okay, we get a good job. Get married, have kids. Like, okay, cool. Or like whatever your path may take you. But then what? Then what's past life, love, and beauty? What's past all of that? And I love that some photography actually kind of tackles that for me a bit. Yeah.
How good have you been over the years? Shooting photos since you were 9, cataloging all this stuff. How organized have you been able to maintain just the mountain of content you've produced as an individual? I've taken many photos over years. I've never had that discipline with digital that you've had, which is a great idea, and I wish I had thought of that earlier. But you end up with mountains and mountains of stuff. How have you been with keeping track of all that? Are you able to find something quickly, or do you?
Yeah, sort of. My workflow didn't really come into effect until like 2013, so I'm still figuring that out, still catching up. Yeah, and what's weird is with film, you can like scan film. Now it's easier than ever. I mean, you could get a scanner online for nothing, and just it looks great and amazing. It's better than some scanners you can get for like nothing. That look better than wet scans that you would have to pay like $50 for in the past. But CRC was really helpful here in New York with getting all my stuff organized, all my film organized for me. But yeah, I say it with like, yeah, kind of organized. There's a closet somewhere at home that would like kill someone if they opened it too fast, of just tons of boxes of images and stuff. But yeah, my workflow has changed a bit.
Cool, yeah. Well, I asked that question because it's a nice little humanizing aspect.
Oh, yeah,
we all
for
struggle
sure.
with it.
Oh, yeah. I'm a digital hoarder.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, we got to wrap it up. We're out of time, but, Hollywood, it's available where books are sold, man. It's all over the place now. You're on the tour. Where are you heading next?
Well, next, I'm doing www.keeganallenlive.com. I'm doing a live signing for anyone in the world, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. And the book is available tomorrow, April 24th, at www.keeganallenbook.com or wherever books are sold.
You're doing a global signing?
I am tonight, yeah. I'm really excited about that one.
That's super cool.
Yeah, because all my fans in Brazil, they're like, come to Brazil. I'm like, no, you come to KeeganAllen.com, like KeeganAllenLive.com.
You got to tell all of Canada that.
Yeah, Canada, anywhere in the world.
Canada delegates here.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much. Everybody, please put your hands together. Join me in thanking one more time the great Keegan Allen.
Thank you all so much.